Okay, so you mentioned a love for India,
Yeah.
and I have to say, its history is absolutely captivating.
Absolutely.
Jawaharlal Nehru's The Discovery of India. Truly unique perspective,
It is.
I need to say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What makes Nehru's work so fascinating is
Yeah.
that it's not just a dry historical account.
Right.
It's a deeply personal exploration of India's past,
Yeah.
written while he was imprisoned during the struggle for independence.
Imagine trying to understand the soul of your nation while literally being confined.
Yeah.
That's powerful stuff.
Yeah.
And we're covering a lot of ground here.
We are.
Ancient civilizations, the impact of colonialism,
Yeah.
the fight for freedom,
Mm-hmm.
all seen through the eyes of someone who helped shape modern India.
Exactly.
Look at-
Nehru blends personal reflections, historical analysis,
Yeah.
and philosophical insights.
Right.
It's like he's trying to decode the essence of what makes India. And he starts with the Indus Valley civilization.
Now, I have to admit, when I think ancient civilization, my mind usually jumps to Egypt or Mesopotamia.
Yeah,
But the Indus Valley was thriving over 4,000 years ago.
that's right.
Really?
Nehru calls it age-old.
Wow.
And for good reason. It
Yeah.
wasn't just old.
Right,
It was
yeah.
already a complex,
Yeah.
mature civilization.
Wow.
Think of it this way. While the pyramids were being built in Egypt,
Right.
the Indus Valley already had bustling cities with advanced drainage systems.
Oh, wow.
They were ahead of their time in many ways.
Wow, that puts things into perspective.
Yeah.
And here's what I find really intriguing.
Okay.
Nehru points out that this ancient civilization was surprisingly secular.
Mm-hmm.
Religion didn't seem to dominate their lives the way it did in other ancient cultures.
That's a key point.
Yeah.
Imagine a civilization that advanced flourishing without a rigid religious structure at its core.
It's hard to imagine.
It challenges our assumptions about the role of religion in early societies, doesn't it?
It certainly does.
Yeah.
You'd expect a civilization that old to be steeped in religious dogma.
Yeah.
But the Indus Valley suggests a different story altogether.
It does.
It really does.
And that secular thread might even connect to modern India's emphasis on secularism.
Ah,
It makes you wonder how much of our present is rooted in our distant past.
it's like those ancient echoes are still reverberating today.
Mm-hmm.
But speaking of roots,
Yeah.
we can't talk about India without talking about Dharma.
Right.
I know it's a big deal,
It is.
but I'm a bit fuzzy on the specifics.
Okay.
It's more than just religion, right?
You're absolutely right.
Okay.
It goes beyond a specific creed or rituals.
Mm-hmm.
Nehru describes it as a conception of obligations, of the discharge of one's duties to oneself and to others.
Okay.
Think of it as a moral compass, guiding how people should live their lives.
So less about worshiping a particular deity and more about a sense of duty and ethical conduct.
Okay. And it's not just an abstract concept.
Right.
Imagine a merchant in ancient India facing a moral dilemma in his business dealings.
Okay.
Dharma would provide a framework for him to make a just and ethical decision,
Yeah.
even if it meant sacrificing personal gain.
That's a powerful example.
Yeah,
It makes Dharma feel very relevant,
it does.
even in our modern world.
It does.
And it also makes me think about how a non-Brahmin like Gandhi could rise to national leadership.
That's a great connection.
Yeah.
Dharma played a vital role there.
Okay.
It provided a framework for moral authority that transcended the rigid social hierarchy of the caste system.
Huh.
In a way, it allowed someone like Gandhi to command, respect, and lead a nation,
Yeah.
even without belonging to the priestly class.
So in a sense, Dharma leveled the playing field,
Yeah.
allowing individuals to rise based on their moral compass rather than their social standing.
Exactly.
That's fascinating.
And this concept of Dharma wasn't confined to India.
Oh,
Nehru highlights how Indian philosophy, particularly the Upanishads,
okay.
deeply impacted Western thinkers like Schopenhauer.
Really?
He found solace and inspiration in these ancient texts.
Wow.
It shows that even thousands of years ago,
Yeah.
there was a vibrant exchange of ideas across cultures.
It really highlights how interconnected the world has always been.
It does.
We often think of globalization as a modern phenomenon,
Right.
but the exchange of ideas and philosophies has been happening for millennia.
Exactly.
Ah.
It's a reminder that we've always been part of a larger conversation.
Yeah.
A global tapestry woven with threads of thought and inspiration from diverse cultures.
Okay, so we've got these incredibly advanced ancient civilizations in India with a unique philosophical foundation rooted in Dharma.
Yeah.
What happened next in this grand narrative?
Well, after centuries of flourishing empires and this cross-cultural exchange, a new power arrived on the scene.
Right.
Colonialism.
Right.
And as Nehru argues,
Mhm.
British rule cast a long shadow over India. It was unlike anything India had experienced before.
You mentioned that the British saw India as a typical colony,
Right.
which feels almost jarring.
Yeah.
Given India's long history of powerful empires.
And that's the crucial point.
Yeah.
India had never been a colony in this way.
Right.
Previous rulers,
Yeah.
like the Mughals, came to see India as their home.
Right.
They integrated into Indian society,
Yeah.
adopted customs,
Right.
and even contributed to its art and architecture.
But the British held themselves apart.
They did.
Almost like they were afraid of being absorbed, wouldn't you say?
Exactly.
Right.
They established a rigid social divide
Yeah.
with separate living spaces,
Right.
social circles, even different legal systems for the British and Indian.
Oh, wow. It's almost like they built a wall around themselves,
Yeah.
both physically and metaphorically.
Yeah.
But this wasn't just about social snobbery, was it?
Yeah.
This separation had a very clear economic purpose.
Absolutely. This divide served to justify the economic exploitation of India's resources.
Okay.
Nehru is quite pointed in his critique here. He talks about the devastating impact on India's traditional industries,
Right.
particularly textiles.
Yes.
Yeah,
He uses really strong language there.
he does.
He talks about India being reduced to an agricultural economy,
Right.
stripped of its industrial strength.
Yeah.
That's a powerful indictment.
Yeah, it is.
Mhm.
He saw it as a deliberate policy.
Okay.
India had skilled artisans,
Yeah.
an abundance of raw materials,
Right.
even some capital.
Okay.
Yet British policies were designed to favor British-made goods,
Right.
crippling India's ability to compete on a global scale.
It's heartbreaking to think about a nation with so much potential
Yeah.
being systematically held back.
Yeah.
This raises an important question for me.
Okay.
How did the British manage to control such a vast and diverse population for so long?
Yeah.
I mean, India wasn't a small, homogenous nation.
Right.
It was a complex tapestry of cultures and languages.
That's a crucial question.
Right.
Part of the answer lies in how they leveraged existing social structures,
Okay.
particularly the caste system.
Right.
It's a complicated legacy.
Could do this.
Sure. The British offered protection and a degree of autonomy,
Right.
but it came at a cost.
Mhm.
Loyalty and subordination to the crown.
It's fascinating how the British adapted their approach to different parts of Indian society,
It is.
always seeking to maintain their dominance,
Yeah.
divide and rule, as the saying goes.
A cynical
Right.
but effective strategy.
Yeah.
No doubt.
It's amazing.
It allowed them to maintain control with a relatively small number of British officials.
Wow.
But as Nehru points out,
Yeah.
this control came at a steep price for India.
Okay, so we've got this picture of economic exploitation, social division being reinforced,
Right.
and political manipulation.
Yeah.
With all of this going on, how did Indians even begin to resist?
Yeah.
Where did the seeds of the independence movement come from?
Well, Nehru argues that it started with a cultural reawakening in the 19th century.
Okay.
Thinkers like Ram Mohan Roy began challenging outdated social practices
Right.
and advocating for reforms.
So it wasn't just about kicking out the British.
No.
It was about a deeper transformation within India itself.
Exactly.
Okay.
These reformers were inspired both by Western ideas like democracy and liberalism,
Right.
and by India's own rich philosophical traditions.
Good.
They were forging a new path, seeking to blend the best of both worlds.
It sounds like they were creating a new vision for India, one that embraced modernity while staying rooted in its own heritage.
Precisely.
Okay.
And this blending of ideas extended to education,
Right.
the introduction of English education.
Yeah.
Although initially intended to create a class of loyal administrators,
Mm-hmm.
had the unintended consequence of exposing Indians to new ideas,
Ah.
to new ways of thinking about the world.
Ideas that would eventually fuel the independence movement, I imagine.
Exactly.
Okay.
This new generation of English-educated Indians started demanding political reform,
Right.
forming organizations like the British Indian Association. It was the first glimmer of organized resistance to British rule.
But I'm guessing these early reformers were mostly from the elite, right?
That's true, but figures like Swami Vivekananda emerged,
Yeah.
challenging this elitism and calling for the upliftment of the masses.
Okay.
He emphasized social justice and bridging the gap between the educated elite
Right.
and the vast majority of Indians living in poverty.
So the movement was broadening its base,
Yeah.
becoming more inclusive and encompassing a wider spectrum of Indian society.
Yes, and this inclusivity was essential for building a truly national movement.
Okay.
But as the movement grew,
Mhm.
so did the challenges it faced.
Right.
And no figure looms larger in this struggle than Mahatma Gandhi.
Right. Gandhi,
Yeah,
his philosophy of nonviolence is globally recognized.
it is.
But I have to admit,
Mhm.
it always feels a bit paradoxical.
Yeah.
Especially in the context of colonialism.
Yeah.
How do you reconcile nonviolence with such an oppressive system?
It's a question that Nehru grapples with as well. Yeah.
Gandhi's unwavering commitment to nonviolent resistance,
Right.
even in the face of incredible injustice,
Right.
was a radical idea.
I can only imagine the debates and controversies that must have surrounded his approach.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Some saw it as a sign of weakness.
Right.
Others questioned its effectiveness against a powerful empire like Britain. But Gandhi's impact went far beyond tactics.
Okay.
He transformed the very nature of the independence movement.
In what way?
He brought the masses into the struggle.
Okay.
His message of self-reliance,
Right.
of Swaraj,
Yeah.
resonated with ordinary Indians.
Okay.
He empowered them to resist British rule in their everyday lives.
So it wasn't just about protests and political negotiations. It
Yep.
was about a shift in consciousness,
Yeah,
a reclaiming of their own agency.
precisely.
Okay.
And this mass mobilization was crucial in pressuring the British. But the path to independence was far from smooth.
Right.
There were internal divisions,
Yeah.
political complexities,
And a growing sense of urgency as the world emerged from the Second World War.
and of course there was the looming question of what a free India would look like.
Yes.
Would it be a unified nation, or would it fracture along religious lines?
That's where we enter one of the most tumultuous chapters in India's history.
Yeah.
The partition.
The Partition of India. It's a story filled with hope and heartbreak,
It is.
a testament to the complexities of nation building and the enduring legacy of colonialism.
Yes. It's a pivotal moment in India's story.
Right.
As the end of British rule became imminent,
Yeah.
the question of what a free India would look like
Right.
became increasingly urgent.
And as we discussed, the idea of Pakistan,
Yes.
a separate Muslim-majority state,
Right.
emerged as a major point of contention.
It did.
It must have been a deeply challenging time for leaders like Nehru and Gandhi,
It was.
who had envisioned a unified and independent India.
Absolutely. Nehru was deeply committed to a united India. He saw the demand for Pakistan as a threat to the very fabric of the nation he had fought so hard for.
But I can understand the fear and uncertainty
Yeah.
that must have driven that demand for a separate state.
Yeah.
For many Muslims, the prospect of living in a Hindu-majority country
Yeah.
raised concerns about their rights and representation.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Those concerns were real.
Okay.
And Nehru acknowledged them.
Right.
He argued passionately that a truly independent India
Yeah.
must guarantee the rights of all its citizens,
Right.
regardless of religion.
Right.
He envisioned a secular, pluralistic society where everyone could thrive.
So he wasn't dismissive of those concerns.
You know,
He genuinely believed that a unified India
he
did accommodate the aspirations of all its people.
Exactly.
Okay.
He believed that dividing the country
Right.
would not only weaken India strategically, but also exacerbate existing tensions,
Right.
creating a wound that would be difficult to heal.
And what about Gandhi?
Yeah.
How did he approach this incredibly challenging situation?
Gandhi, too, was deeply opposed to partition. He saw it as a betrayal of the principles of unity and brotherhood that had been at the heart of his philosophy and his movement.
Right.
He had dedicated his life to bridging divides,
Yeah.
to bringing people together,
Right.
and the thought of India being cleaved in two
Yeah.
must have been agonizing for him.
It's a stark reminder that even the most visionary leaders
Yeah.
sometimes face circumstances beyond their control.
Absolutely.
Despite their best efforts, despite their unwavering commitment to unity,
Yeah.
the forces of history took a different course.
Yes. The political climate was changing rapidly as
Yeah.
the end of British rule drew closer.
Yeah.
Anxieties and fears intensified on both sides of the religious divide.
Right.
There was a growing sense among some Muslims that their interests and their identity could only be protected in a separate state.
It must have been a heartbreaking realization for leaders like Nehru and Gandhi to see their dream of a united India slipping away.
It was a tragedy. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
The partition led to immense suffering,
Right.
displacement, and violence.
Yeah.
It's a chapter in India's history that continues to cast a long shadow,
Right.
shaping the relationship between India and Pakistan to this day.
It's a stark reminder of the human cost of division,
It is.
of the enduring scars that political decisions can leave on generations to come.
Indeed. But
Yeah.
amidst this tragedy, there was also a new beginning.
Okay.
In 1947,
Yeah.
India finally achieved independence,
Wow.
and Jawaharlal Nehru,
Yeah.
that tireless advocate for freedom and unity,
Right.
became its first prime minister.
Talk about a pivotal moment.
It was.
To guide a nation through the birth pangs of independence,
Yeah.
to shape its destiny in those crucial early years. What an immense
It
responsibility.
was a monumental task, and Nehru approached it with characteristic vision and determination.
Okay.
He was deeply influenced by the ideas of social justice and economic equality. He believed that India needed to modernize rapidly
Right.
while ensuring that the benefits of progress reached all sections of society.
So he wasn't just focused on political independence.
Yeah,
He had a
yeah.
broader vision of social and economic transformation.
He did.
He wanted to build a nation that was not only free,
Yes.
but also just and equitable.
Exactly.
Okay.
He laid the groundwork for India's democratic institutions.
Right.
Its parliament,
Yeah.
judiciary, and free press.
Wow.
He launched ambitious programs for industrialization,
Right.
education, and social reform,
Wow.
all aimed at creating a modern,
Yeah.
prosperous, and inclusive India.
It was a bold vision,
It was.
and one that wasn't without its challenges.
Right.
India was emerging from centuries of colonial rule, grappling with poverty,
Yeah.
illiteracy, and the wounds of partition.
The challenges were immense, but Nehru faced them head on.
He did.
He believed that India,
Huh.
with its ancient wisdom and its experience of colonialism,
Right.
had a unique role to play in the world,
Okay.
promoting peace, non-alignment, and international cooperation.
So he saw India not as a passive player on the global stage,
Yeah.
but as a nation with a voice,
Yeah.
a mission, and a responsibility to contribute to a better world.
Precisely.
Wow.
And looking back on his life and work,
Yeah.
I think that's one of his most enduring legacies.
Right.
He wasn't just a leader of India, he was a leader who spoke to the aspirations of people all over the world,
Yeah.
striving for freedom, justice, and a more humane global order.
It's a legacy that continues to inspire today.
It does.